like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home. Party, party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 9 of the Ball Talk podcast. There's only one thing we're talking about tonight, and it is the Oklahoma City Thunder potentially being the best team of all time. I don't think that's an overreaction.
All time. They have the second highest net rating of all time behind the 1996 Chicago Bulls.
Anyone of interest on that team, Chris?
No, not that I can think of. Only the greatest player of all time, some might say. Some would argue. I'm not going to argue that, but
Shea was on that team?
yeah.
Getting a little ahead of ourselves. But anyway, welcome in, everyone. I got Chris with me. We are here to talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder's 134-114, just absolute destruction of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
And the game wasn't even that close. It wasn't even a 20-point game.
No, we just, before we hit record, we were talking about the Thunder were up 38 points going into the fourth quarter. Like, this game was over. I mean, you could tell at halftime it was like, okay, we're up big. Cleveland has all their bigs. But since our last podcast, Isaiah Hartenstein was ruled out for about a week with
a calf strain.
It's basically a calf strain. They had some weird name for it, like a soleus.
Shout out to my wife. She told me what it was today. She told me it's when you like flex your knee, it's the muscle that bends your foot or something. And she'll probably correct me tomorrow, but shout out to my wife.
Shout out my wife. Yeah, Chris and I were at the game tonight. I don't know about you, but I walked into that game. I wouldn't say like I was like, if we lose, we lose. I fully expect to lose. Cleveland beat us last week in Cleveland in a great game.
30 lead changes. 30
lead changes in that game. Honestly, just great basketball played. The ball just bounced Cleveland's way. And hats off to them for winning that game. But since our last podcast, as we just mentioned, Isaiah Hartenstein had been ruled out for, he said it, at least a week, the team did. And so Chet's not back yet. With Chet and Hartenstein out against the Cavaliers, they have 2 7-footers that just wrecked us last time, and
right.
Mobley and Jared Allen. It was a game that the Thunder should have lost.
100%. Like you said, I expected to win.
You expected to win, or you expected to lose?
I expeced to lose. Yeah. But like,
at
as
this
my
point,
dad always
high
said,
on life, baby. High on life. We're winning every game.
Yeah. I expected to win that game. No, my dad always told me, if they knew what was going to happen, why would they roll out the ball? Why would they even like throw the ball up and let people play? So
he's a wise man.
This is one of those games where you look at it. That's why you throw the ball out in the NBA, because any night a team can beat any team, regardless how good they are.
This almost feels like poetic justice for the game that the Thunder. It was the last game before Hartenstein played after he broke his hand. It was the last game we played before this game without a true 7-footer. We lost to the Victor Wembanyama-less Spurs.
Yes.
And that was a game that, like, we were like, okay, like, we're going to win big. It was an NBA Cup game, which honestly, the NBA Cup is stupid and doesn't even matter. But it was a game that it was like, okay, let's just cakewalk and get back to Oklahoma City and win this. And then we lost by 6 that game. So this almost feels like the course correction for that.
Yeah.
But looking at the box score, Cleveland wasn't really like, I'm double checking. Yeah, they weren't really missing anyone.
I'm seeing a pattern. Donovan Mitchell, who's been a great guard all year, scoring a bunch of points, playing really good offense. In the 2 games the Thunder have played against the Cleveland Cavaliers, he has been abysmal. Just like, he was 3 for 15 tonight, 1 for 4 from the 3-point line, and blew a bunch of layups. He was just
against a team without a 7-footer.
Right. No rim protector. He's been so good all season. It's just like, against the Thunder, it's becoming a pattern. That's all I want to say.
Because Chris is saying that because back when last Wednesday when we played the Cavs, Mitchell had a terrible game. I would argue worse than this game. And I don't have the stats directly in front of me, but Lou Dort's a problem. I think the biggest things that you can take out of tonight's game, one, holy cow. That's the number one takeaway. Two, Shea's your MVP. Like, I think he won it tonight.
Yeah, 40 points in 3 quarters.
Didn't play the fourth, 8 assists.
So would that be the third game in the last 4 games where the starters didn't play in the fourth quarter?
Sixers.
They didn't play against the Knicks. They didn't play against the who's after the Knicks?
Wizards.
They didn't play against the Wizards. They played against the Knicks or the
Sixers, but not that long.
But not that long. They kind of turned it on with 6 minutes left or whatever. That's the third game in 4 games, 3 out of 4 games that the starters haven't played the entire fourth quarter.
I mean, we're jumping around a little bit. The score of the game at the end of the third quarter was 119-81.
Right.
Like, it was so over. And it's one, like we talked about it before. The NBA did such a great job of marketing that first game, and it delivered. It was a top tier game. Both sides played well. Neither team lost the game. Cleveland just went out and won it and played a little bit better than the Thunder.
100%.
They backed that up when talking about the NBA. They backed that up and were marketing this game as well. And they tweets were deeming it the rematch of a regular season game, which you don't really see that for a regular season contest. That's a playoff thing. Especially like giving a nickname to a game. And the Thunder delivered and all this happened leading up to Hartenstein's injury. And then obviously it was so late in the process that they couldn't all of a sudden just change it back. Because this game was flexed into the primetime slot tonight. And then all of a sudden they weren't going to be like, oh, Hartenstein's not playing. Never mind. I mean, what the Thunder did tonight, I don't know how you can look at this team and not like I texted so many people during that game that said, get me into the studio. And I had a few to drink. It was a great night.
That's a move. Start texting and calling people, which is a great friend move. But
I mean, I texted Chris. What did I text you? I said, this pod has potential.
That's all you said to me.
And you said, shh, with the shushing emoji. We said going into that game, we expected to lose. That first quarter, when Shea had 15, or was it 18? He had at least 15 in the first. I think it might have been 18. Just blew the doors off of him. No one could guard him. The main storyline of the first quarter was freaking Brendan Carlson.
I read a note about Brendan Carlson because all I said was he made 2 threes and he played some pretty solid defense on Mobley. And at that point I was like, get the kid out. I said, let him get a contract off of those 4 possessions and just never play him again and get the kid some money. But then he came back and hit a 3 in the fourth quarter. He played really well tonight. I was so impressed.
Here's the funniest thing about you saying that. I was sitting there with my buddy Sawyer, and the second quarter, I looked over at him and I was like, Carlson hasn't played since. He had 2 threes in the first. He had several rebounds, several contests. He was playing competitive basketball in a way that the Thunder were benefiting from. And you knew Mark was excited about, especially with Hartenstein out. Jay Will picked up 4 fouls pretty quick, not in the first, but him and Dort were in foul trouble. And I looked at Sawyer in the second quarter and I was like, Carlson has to come back in. And we had started stretching the lead, so it made sense. And and then the third quarter comes and I was like, Carlson has still not played. It was like Mark knew that here's a 6-minute stretch with this guy who not only is he on a 10-day contract, which means he can basically be on the active roster for 10 in 10 days we have the option to sign him to an additional 10-day contract. And then after that, we have to decide to waive him or sign him to an actual deal. This guy was waived like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because he was on a guaranteed contract as the 15th man on the roster, and we waived him. And everyone thought that it was AJ Mitchell that was going to get that position. Obviously, he's hurt right now. But regardless, he was never going to be the guy that was going to be that 15th man. And Mark was like, we're playing this team with 2 7-footers. We don't have one except for you. So, Brennan, I'm going to give you 6 minutes in this first quarter, and that's going to determine the game. And he comes in, hits the 2 threes, he plays fantastic basketball. As you said, like I texted several people in that first quarter. I said, give him the max contract.
Yeah.
Like he played that well. And then he didn't come back in until the fourth quarter when the game was decided. It was like Mark knew if I play him any more than this, it's going to go poorly.
Yeah.
He maxed out his potential.
It was a ticking time bomb.
Because what did he end up with? Let me see. I got it right here. He had 11 points, 4 rebounds,
3 threes.
3 threes. I mean, it cracked me up so much that he never came back in during meaningful minutes of basketball. Not that I think most of that game was meaningful minutes because it was a blowout for most of the game. But
he was in the most meaningful minutes of that game. You talked about.
That's fair.
He was in the first quarter when the game was sort of in the balance, And so I think it was just sort of like, it was interesting and kind of funny that he was in for those meaningful minutes and then didn't see time again. We went with a small ball lineup.
I joked with Sawyer. I said the team that was out there then, and we didn't even have Jay Will out there at this time. It was like Shea, Kenrich was the 5. Like we didn't have a guy above 6'6" on the floor. It was back whenever Hartenstein, Jay Will, and Chet were all hurt. Like it was that vibe of a lineup. And I was like, Mark knows that these 5 players, regardless of height, will not lose a 30-point lead. If you put Brennan Carlson in there and he starts having, like I said, he maxed out his potential in those 6 minutes. If he has to body up Evan Mobley and Jared Allen for 48 minutes, there's a higher chance the Cavs come back from 30. Yeah, it's like he's playing the roster that will not, like, regardless of, like, they might cut it to 15 or 10. They're not going to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously that is why I think that Carlson didn't play again. But shout out to Brennan Carlson, man.
Right.
That was awesome.
Good to see a guy on a 10-day contract. You see those in the NBA every once in a while where a guy on a 10-day contract has sort of a night like this, and you always kind of smile and say, at least this guy's going to get some money somewhere.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a 30 for 30 documentary by any means, but if the Thunder win the championship this year, we're going to talk about this Brennan Carlson game.
Well, like Mark says, it's just one game. Just one regular season game.
Screw that. This is not just a regular season game. This team should have got killed tonight. And Shea said no. Brennan Carlson said no.
BC. We'll call him BC from now on.
Yeah, BC. He might not be on the team next week.
Yeah. But the good thing is, like a team like the Jazz, or I would say Detroit, but they're actually playing pretty well, or like Charlotte might pick him up, right? He showing that potential in a big game like that is like, oh, kind of interesting for a team who's trying to build something, and he might find his way on a different roster.
So the interesting thing about him, and I did not expect this pod to morph into a Brennan Carlson pod. So we signed him to a guaranteed contract in the NBA. He is really a G League player. He cannot play for our G League team because the Raptors G League affiliate has his G League rights. So if we don't have him on a guaranteed contract or a 10-day, he goes back to Toronto and their G League team, unless there's a G League trade.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. So can he go and sign a contract with a different NBA team?
Yes.
On G League? So he can go and, like, Toronto could sign him to a 10-day or whatever.
10-day, Denver, New York, literally any other team.
Oh,
but
gotcha.
if he gets sent to the G League, it has to be for Toronto.
That's funny. Okay.
Unless they trade for his rights. In the G League. The G League team trades for his rights.
Gotcha.
We're gonna move on from Brennan Carlson. Shout out to BC. We talked about this a little bit. I think Shea won the MVP tonight. We said a couple pods ago that, or at least I said, we need to win one of these nationally broadcasted games because after that like fake scrimmage cup game and the Cavs game last week, we had not won any of these big like hyped games that all the eyes were on. Like it was on ESPN, ABC, TNT. I did not expect it to be tonight. Like we still have some other nationally broadcasted games. Chet's going to come back. I'm sure there's some games that might get flexed into some of the national games, but I didn't. And obviously this is all moot at this point. I did not say this to anyone out loud, but in my brain, and this was probably more hopium than anything, I said to myself while sitting at work today, Shea can go win the MVP tonight. Like if he goes off and does what, like has a Shea game and we somehow beat Cleveland tonight, Shea will win the MVP. Because of the national audience.
Yeah, your brain is deeply crevassed and very hilly. That is a very smart thing. I think Shea did, in fact, go ahead and assert himself as the national favorite now, doing that on a big screen. I think you're totally right.
Because he was already the favorite. Like in terms of betting odds, he had moved ahead of Jokic, and he hadn't even had that like signature game yet. And what's crazy is, speaking of like his stat line and everything, he had 40 points, 8 assists, 3 rebounds, 2 steals. He didn't play the fourth quarter. And it almost felt like he left stuff out there.
Yeah.
Like it is not like I think Shea played, to his standards, a perfect game.
Well, I don't think Shea would ever play a perfect game by his standards, and that's why he's so good at basketball. There's always something to improve on.
I get that. And I love that he has that attitude. But like even from like a casual fan watching that game, Shea was by far the best basketball player on that court. There has been maybe 2 or 3 times all year that he was not obviously the best basketball player on the court. And this team just beat who has been the best team in the NBA this year, has a completely healthy roster. The Thunder are coming in. You're missing Chet, as has been well documented. Hartenstein gets ruled out on Wednesday, the day before the game.
Right.
And says, you know what, guys? I don't care. Like, I don't care. And not only did he play great, the whole team played great. We haven't even talked about Lou Dort yet. He had 22 tonight.
That little hezzy dribble he had into the corner that looked vaguely familiar, like Shea did it. That little pull-up he had at the short corner was awesome. Awesome.
I mean, it's like encapsulates the night. Like,
right.
What he did. You mentioned Donovan Mitchell earlier and what he did to shut him down. That plus he shot 6 of 9, nice, from the 3-point line. Finished with 22 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal and a block. He picked up his like 3rd foul early, like maybe it was mid-second, early to mid-second, on a call that I thought was stupid. I don't know if you remember, but Jared Allen was coming down on the right side of the paint. Lou was already standing there. They call a block. He was well outside the restricted area. The TV broadcast wasn't even back from commercial yet. They never even said to the TV broadcast what the decision was, outside of just like they tuned in and you're like, oh, Cavs are shooting. They said that Lou did not allow him to land. And the way that it looked, and obviously the Thunder broadcast crew is going to depict the replay in a way that is beneficial to the Thunder because they want the Cavs in there. They never showed an angle in the arena that Dort was not standing there stationary when Allen left his feet, because they were saying that Dort did not allow Allen to land.
Right. And even when he did land, to me, like you said, it looked like on the Jumbotron that he did have both feet down before he hit Dort.
Yeah.
I didn't
And then his like shoulder or elbow or whatever went like directly into his neck.
I know. The reffing was interesting tonight. That I thought the flagrant foul on Jalen Williams was really crazy. He like the way that Darius Garland like moved the ball to the right as Jalen Williams was like trying to block it. It was like, well, yeah, Jalen Williams was going for the ball, but Darius Garland moved the ball to the right. He probably hit him in the face, and it didn't. And they said there was the way the ref said is there was definite wind up and follow through. I was like, I didn't see that at all.
I screamed out loud. I was like, he is playing basketball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like basketball is not a stationary sport.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I immediately started, like, so many people on Twitter, especially some of the better NBA follows, like Rob Perez and a couple of the other ones, notice, especially on a broadcast, when the NBA slows down and like the Thunder were on they went on like a 20-2 run to end the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into these reviews, I don't care how good one team is playing. I don't care if the Cavs were on the other side. Like, I don't care if it was flipped.
Right.
The just momentum of the entire game, not just individual team, the flow of the game, everything is completely wrecked when every single time, like the Mark challenge, the Lou Dort call that we just talked about, that was dictated by the coach. They go to the review, takes a minute, they come back, whatever, they're shooting free throws. It was one or two possessions later, the J. Will flagrant that Chris mentioned comes up. And that's not challenged. That's dictated by the ref to say, hey, I'm going to go look at this to see if like any shot to the face really is deemed worthy of a review of the ref. And so it's like, okay, so we basically played 30 seconds of basketball in 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah, you can see
the entire juice was gone.
The juice in the building kind of, obviously it came back when, we were continue to build that lead, but the juice for those moments, because at that point it was like a flagrant foul, so they got 2 shots and then they hit a 3. It was like a 5-point swing, which brought
Garland. Garland had
20,
all 5.
Yeah, our 24-point lead down to 19, which is which is fine, but like it did slow down the game immensely.
Well, if the game had gone a different way, it's a moment in the game that you're like, it switched there.
Right. Mm-hmm. I had people yelling in front of me saying that Adam Silver called that one in. They can't have the 2 best teams in the NBA go at it like this and the Thunder just rip them a new one. So I was like, well, I doubt it, but
no, I said that several times out loud. I said I might have been one of them. It was just the echo that you heard from a couple sections away. Because I was like, oh my gosh, we're on TNT and they don't want to see these 2 teams that they hyped up for everything look this lopsided.
Right.
And then at one point I was calling out a ref for like, I know you're on TNT, but everyone tuned in to see the players.
Was it number 39? One of my favorite things that when we used to sit together a lot more, we used to just yell at the refs. And
good and bad.
All the refs have numbers on the back, so you can yell like, wait, good call 50 or good call 39 or whatever you're yelling.
Because it's never an NBA, it's never like a natural NBA number.
No, they're all crazy. And so it's just so fun to yell at the refs like that. And so then like ever since then, I've started like knowing refs numbers, and you kind of like get to know which refs are. And it looked like 39 was the ref, the guy who was little light on the top. Hair wise was making some questionable calls all night.
Well, and the thing that was annoying about all that is that those two things happened, those two calls. We challenged, and then they reviewed the flagrant. And later in the game, Garland goes in, and his knee hits Jalen Williams directly in the groin to the point where all males will agree it's going to hurt for a little bit. And he's down. Like,
Right.
not in a way that he's like seriously injured, but it's like I need a minute.
Yeah.
Which with the NBA, it is like the face and that area usually is deemed necessary of some kind of further review to check for any additional flagrant 1 or 2. 1 is 2 shots and ball, 2 is 2 shots and ball, and the player is kicked out.
Right.
It's very rarely a flagrant 2. Flagrant 1s are very common in the NBA. It's not like you don't get a tech for it or anything. It's just like hey, let's not aim for the head or aim for the nether regions.
Mm-hmm.
But J Will's down, and like there was so much time where like Mark was arguing. The arena crew did such a great job of like immediately putting the replay on.
Yeah.
So Mark's sitting there. It always cracks me up because anytime Mark is debating challenging something, the way that the arena jumbotron is set up, he can only see like the inner part on the bottom because obviously he's on the court, and he does his little squint thing and he's looking straight up. Yeah, and he's like waiting for them to show the angle.
His arms are usually crossed or his hands are in his pocket.
And then he's looking back at the bench. He's like, do I challenge? Do I challenge?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have a challenge. And they just were like, no, it's good. Like they didn't even think to challenge it or to review it. The refs did.
I thought it was a basketball play. I thought both of those flagrant potentials are just basketball plays that like just sort of go that way sometimes. Like I don't think Darius Garland lifted his knee or tried to kick him or anything.
It was never intentional. But the annoying part was it happened right after the J Will one.
Right.
And so it was like, let's call an even game. If you hadn't have reviewed the foul by J Will, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But because you made such a big deal to stop the game and go back and then upgrade it to a flagrant 1 and didn't look at that one, that's the annoying part.
I agree.
And we're saying all this, and I don't want to go on like a big ref tangent. The Thunder won by 20 after getting outscored by 18 in the 4th. This was a dominant victory the entire time. But it was just like the refs were trying to figure out a way to make this close so that ratings would increase or whatever. But the Thunder were like, nah, we just going to take care of business. Like that just what happened. They couldn't do anything about it because Cleveland was that bad. And my next point that I had,
go ahead. No, I was going to say, and like Cleveland wasn't even that bad. I mean, they didn't shoot terribly. They shot 31%, which is not great
from three or from the field.
From 3, but it's not great from the 3, but it's not like horrendous. Like there are some shooting splits that we've had that have been in the 20s. So it's like
they shot 10 more free throws than us.
Yeah, and Shea only shot 5.
Yep. The thing that I think is my biggest takeaway tonight. 1, if this is the matchup in the finals, which is not like that preposterous to say, if this is the matchup in the finals, the adjustments that Mark made from game 1 to game 2, and not just obviously with the circumstances, it wasn't just like okay, we're going to change a little bit of strategy. You did not have a 7-footer available after having one in the first game. I was already looking forward to that. We talked about it last week. It felt like if Chet was on the floor last week in Cleveland, they were winning that game regardless. Tonight, it was like if we just had one 7-footer going into it, we were like, if we only have one 7-footer, we could find a way. We have a chance. Not even a chance. It was like we're at home. And like Shea's so competitive, the team is so competitive that I didn't really think we'd lose this. And Vegas didn't either because the spread opened at 3.5 in favor of the Thunder. The Hartenstein news came out and it only dropped to 1.5.
I saw 2.5, but yeah, it didn't even drop that much.
Yeah. But I think when looking at the strategy of the game, the zone was a huge killer for us, at least used against us. It killed our momentum crazy amount in Cleveland. We shot the ball a lot better tonight, which usually solves a lot of things.
Yes.
Chris said they shot 31% from three. We only shot 34% from three. But if you take out Adam Flagler, it's a lot better. He was 0 of 8.
I'll do that math. Hold on.
Yeah, do that math real quick. But when looking at this game, and I kept trying to figure out their rotations because they start both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, 2 7-footers. They, for long periods of time, tried to match the Thunder small ball. And that is why Shea did what he did tonight, because they have no one on their team they don't have a Herb Jones. They don't have a Lou Dort. They don't have anyone of that caliber that can stay with Shea. So Shea got by anyone in front of him, and there was no one at the rim to protect because they kept their 7-footers off the court for a long stints of time, especially in that second and third quarter, where they were trying to match the Thunder small ball instead of doing what makes them different and unique and playing those 2 7-footers against a team that's already undersized.
Yeah, I kept thinking, I was like, where's Jared at? Where's Allen? Where's Mobley? I thought
at one point I thought Mobley got hurt. A guy was looking for him, and I was like, is he in the locker room?
Yeah. And they just did not do, I guess, I'm not that smart at basketball, I guess, but why aren't you doing what won you the game last time? It felt like last game when we had any momentum, they would come down, they would run a pick play, we would get our big kind of hung high, and they would drop it down to the high post big, and then our guy would reach up, and then they'd have a dunk at the rim. It felt super easy. They did multiple times in a row. Where was that tonight?
And we had a 7-footer on the floor in Cleveland.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the adjustments, because last the playoff series we played against Dallas, it felt like it took a lot for Mark to make a change. We ended up moving Josh Giddey out of the lineup, but it felt like it took a lot, right? And
was it until game 5 or game
right?
Yeah, game 5.
It felt like God, he's got to make some adjustments. Why is he, trying to force Josh Giddey into this lineup? But tonight, as I was driving home, he was on the radio talking in his post-game interview, and he's like, yeah, I mean, we were going to have adjustments regardless. I knew even if we had a 7-footer, we weren't going to press their guards as much. We weren't going to do this and that. And I was like, it's really nice and refreshing to see a coach make adjustments like that. And I think with this team, he's a little more willing to make adjustments, especially with the starting lineup, it being sort of fluid the whole time. And so it made me really continue again to fall in love with Mark Daigneault as a coach. Sorry, that was an interjection.
No, I agree. And Kenny Atkinson is the favorite for coach of the year right now, and he should be, because Cleveland was far and away not expected to be what they are. They were expected to be good, but they were expected to be like a 4 or 5 seed in the East, maybe get up to 3 if things bounce their way. They were not projected to be this good, to the point where people were talking about them winning 70 games. And they still could.
Games.
Yeah, they still could. Because I'd have to go and look at I can't remember what their record is, but we are now tied with them for the best record in the NBA, which only comes into play for the finals. They are 34-6 and we are 34-6. But I say that about they weren't going to their bigs, because you look at a team like Minnesota. Minnesota last year was one of the favorites to win the West. They got to the Western Conference Finals and ran into Luka and Kyrie. Bad matchup for them. Didn't play well. What made them so good? They were the best defense in the league last year. Not in terms of net rating, they weren't to where the Thunder were now, but at the time last year, they were the best defense in the league, and everyone agreed. It was not fluky. But they had Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, 2 7-footers in their starting lineup, attached to Anthony Edwards. Karl Anthony Towns could stretch the floor, but also be a 7-footer, get rebounds, defend the rim a little bit. But at least you had you had size. And the Timberwolves this year pivoted from that setup because of financial restrictions that were about to come into play with the new CBA and how all of that is set up with the first and second apron, which is, we'd have to do a 3-hour pod to explain all that stuff. They traded away. It wouldn't do any good. They traded away Karl Anthony Towns. Right now in the Western Conference, with not only did they keep everyone else outside of Cat, they got good pieces back for Cat. Julius Randle is what he is. He's a bit of a not a team guy, it almost feels like. But they got Dante DiVincenzo, who shoots the lights out of the ball. They got good pieces. They didn't just lose Cat to free agency. They are 8th in the West at 21-19. They are technically only a game up on even being in the play-in.
Right.
Cleveland is the 11th seed. They are 20-20.
Not Cleveland.
Or Phoenix, sorry. And so I say all of that because Cleveland went away from what made them unique and what made them different than the Thunder. The Thunder, I think if they had played the bigs, they weren't going to change how their rotations were, because they were like, this is maybe not the only way we could win the game, but one of the few ways we could go out and be competitive and play competitive basketball.
Yeah.
Cleveland not playing at least one 7-footer, especially when like Shea went on a stretch. Like I think there were like 3 or 4 stretches tonight where Shea went on like 6 to 8 point runs by himself, just by getting to the rim. A couple mid ranges in there. He was 1 of 5 from 3. So it's not like he was getting all of his points behind the 3-point line. He only shot 5 free throws. Most of it was at the rim. Why is your 7-footer not back there? And as a Thunder fan, I'm not mad about it. But that was so weird to me.
Yeah, it felt, you are the best team in the East. You should be able to force teams to play your style. Like the Thunder are the best team in the West. They can force teams to play a smaller ball lineup where they can take advantage. But you're Cleveland. You have the best record in the NBA. Why can't you force the Thunder to, make sure they have a big on the court at all times? Like you couldn't figure that out.
Not just figure it out. You play your game.
Right.
You've practiced all year. Training camp, we're 40 games into the season. You have figured out most of your identity, especially for a team that's playing that well. Against a team that obviously on the other side, you see the Thunder. They are a great basketball team, but they do not have 2 of their most important pieces, especially when combating how you play.
Right.
So why would you go away from that?
Yeah, it's bonkers decision.
And so, unfortunately, with obviously how the scheduling goes out, we only play Eastern Conference teams twice a year. So we wrapped up our home and home series with the Cavs tonight. So we would not see another matchup unless the teams made it to the finals. Which, if that happens, and you have Chet and Hartenstein, and you just saw what Mark did in terms of dictating pace, I mean, I don't know the intricacies, but yes, the identity of the game to where they were not even playing their bigs. And then even if they are playing their bigs, let's just throw Chet out there instead of Kenrich Williams or Hartenstein. Take your pick. I don't care. We talked about this on the last pod. Cleveland does not scare me like Boston does, because Boston has done it, and Cleveland has to get through Boston to get there even.
Right.
And then obviously after you see tonight, whatever. We've said this before. This is a very biased pod. This team is too good to lose to a team like that with how they played everything. And so that's my take for the night. The Thunder are winning the championship. That's the bottom line.
Set the parade route.
Set the parade route.
Yeah, the Thunder do play tomorrow night, the 17th, the Friday the 17th against the Dallas Mavericks.
In Dallas.
Dallas currently has a couple injuries. Derek Lively's out, their big center who was a rookie last year, played really well. Kind of had a wish-washy season this year, but he's out, so they'll just have Daniel Gafford as their one true center. And then Kyrie Irving is listed as questionable for Friday's game against the Thunder. So it'll be interesting to see if Kyrie comes back and plays, because he's a fun watch and pretty incredible. So,
and Luka's still out. Like Luka's not even listed. Yeah,
Luka will be reevaluated. It's his. The injury was December 27th. He'd be reevaluated in a month.
4 weeks, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll be reevaluated in 10 days. I think the Thunder play the Mavs twice before
next
that.
Thursday.
Yeah. So
The 23rd.
Yeah, they'll get a Luca-less Dallas team twice, so we'll see.
Which I think wraps up the series. I don't think we play them again the rest of the year. So we will not see Luca again unless we play him in the playoffs.
Right.
Whatever. We'll cross that bridge. The biggest thing I think is Thunder fans, and I've said before on the spot, the Mavs are the team that scare me the most in the West when they're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst case scenario for Thunder fans, which I think they can beat anyone this year, like we said, bias pod.
Right.
If Dallas somehow slips to the play-in and is the 8th seed, and that's your matchup round 1, that's worst case scenario.
I think so.
No one else but them scares me.
I kind of like it. Maybe it's like you
get the monkey off your back
early. Yeah. So
I get that, but going into that series, I'd be like, you know what? Give me the Kings, give me the Warriors. I mean, if Phoenix sleeps or sneaks in, or the Spurs, give me any of those teams, because that's at worst a gentleman's sweep, which is a 5-1 win.
4-1.
You play 5 games, you win 4-1. But if it's Dallas and they're healthy, I mean, if they're not healthy, that's a different story. But it's right now they're the 7th seed at 22 and 19. You have, like Chris said, Luka gets evaluated in 10 or 11 days. Their young center's hurt. If they somehow stick in that play-in and end up, I mean, if they win, if they're in that 7-8 game, they play the 2 seed if they win. And then obviously there's a lot of stuff that would have to play out. But it's I say worst case scenario, it's the scenario I want to see the least.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a better way to say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as Chris mentioned, they play the Mavs tomorrow night, and then they're back home against the Nets on Sunday. Hartenstein should be, I don't know if it'll be like a true reevaluation, or he'll just all of a sudden appear as like questionable or probable or available on an injury report next week. But this little stretch of games where we're playing predominantly great teams, this was kind of the last game of that, especially with the Mavs being so injury riddled. And so it's a big, like, okay, we can take a breath. We talked about it with the Wizards game on Sunday. It was like, I just get to watch basketball and fully expect to win. And there's a really, really good chance it's going to happen.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens, especially without Hartenstein the rest of this week. Dallas will be interesting, especially if Kyrie plays. It'll be in Dallas. The Nets they should take care of. They're starting to pivot to their true tanking. And then after that, they have a bunch of, not a bunch, but the schedule gets a little easier in terms of the quality of opponent.
Right.
Chris, before we get out of here, Phil Jackson once said that a true sign of a contender is if you win 40 games before you lose 10, or lose 20. If you go 40-19 or better in your first 39 games, that is the sign of you can go win a championship. The Thunder are currently 34-6. So they're 6 games away from 40, 4 games away from 10 losses. Now, I want to ask you, do you think they get to 40 wins before 10 losses?
Before 10 losses? I thought it was 20 losses.
I'm upping it because I think there's like 0 chance they don't get to 40 before 20.
So they have to go, what? They have to go like 5-5?
I'm pulling up the next
6-5, 6-4.
I'm pulling up the next few games. So they're 34-6. They'd have to win 6 of the next 10. Their next 10 games are Thunder at the Mavs, Nets at the Thunder, Jazz at the Thunder, Mavs at the Thunder, Thunder at the Trailblazers, Thunder at the Warriors, and then we're into February with the Kings at home, the Bucks at home, the Suns at home, and the Raptors at home. Those are the next 10.
Yeah, I can see it's a pretty good chance that we break that barrier. Yeah.
I don't disagree. Like I said that and I was like, oh, this could be like a good little talking point. It's like, no, they should.
Yeah, a lot of those teams are pivoting to tank, and I think they're going to be out for blood against Milwaukee, and I think it's going to be a really really fun game. That game specifically after the Cup game went so poorly, so I
If
think they have
you
a really
beat
good
the
chance.
Mavs tomorrow night, you have the Mavs tomorrow night, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. There's 6 games left in January. You could win those 6
Yeah,
and get to 40 right off there without even getting into the next 4 games of the next 10.
right.
I mean, this team's insane, man. Like,
Right.
that's the bottom line. Shea, like we said, won MVP tonight. It's fun. We've said it before. The regular season is great. Get me to the playoffs to see how this team reacts. Give me a month of healthy Chet and Hartenstein. I mean, outside of like if Jalen Williams makes an all-star game and Chet Holmgren's return to play, get me to the playoffs. Like, that's what I want to see now.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else this team can do in the regular season to change what I think of them.
Right. I'd agree.
Which is a great thing to say.
Right.
Great
100%.
thing to say. But yeah, with that, I mean, heck of a night. Thunder win big. Chris and I will be out of town over the next couple days. We're going to try to do a little podcast on the road. We'll see how that works. If not, we'll be back with you in a week, but we'll try to get you guys something out early next week. Chris, anything else to say to the people before we head out tonight?
Yeah, shout out to OU basketball losing again against Texas. 0-4 in SEC play.
Man, I really thought we were going to get through this without that.
Game at 9 p.m. Oh, I was just going to say.
Don't take away my joy.
Shouts out.
No, shout out. Yeah, it's bad in Norman. It's bad.
Mm-hmm. But it's great in Oklahoma City. So that's what we'll focus on.
And that's where we live. And that's where we live, regardless of where our diplomas are from.
Right.
Yeah. We'll see if any good luck in basketball trickles down, I-35 South. I don't want it to. Give me all the luck. I want a championship. I want a championship.
I do too.
Like, let's go start picking out the spot where we put the championship banner. And on that note, we're going to call it tonight. Appreciate everybody listening. We'll talk to you next time. And have a great weekend. Talk to y'all.
All night long.